Welcome back to the Mothers of All Crime. Today we're going to be talking about Sherri Papini. How are we doing, Crystal?
We're good. This is a weird one in my opinion, but how are you before we get into it?
I'm good. It is a weird one. Sherry's an interesting character. And I've really enjoyed all of the millions of documentaries that have been made about her and
I
with
know.
her.
And I yeah, cuz each one has a little bit of a different spin, which is
hmm
nice.
Yeah,
But
I mean, there's a lot of different perspectives.
and I think that goes consistent with her story, right? Because as time goes, we get different versions. So it kind of makes
hmm
sense that each documentary or is a new adaptation per se.
Yes, definitely. It's been an evolving story, which is always interesting. And I feel like when people have complex relationships with the truth, you get a lot of different versions of things, and it's hard to know what to believe, what to be skeptical of. And I mean, I feel like we might as well start from the beginning of when this came to public attention. Uh, so, Sherri Papini is married to her husband, Keith Papini. They have two little kids. Sherry dropped the kids off at daycare. She usually picks them up. She was going for a jog, and when her husband came home from work, he got to the house. Her car is there. She is not there. The kids are not there. He's calling her. She's not answering. He calls the daycare. They say, the kids are here. They haven't been picked up. He thinks that's pretty odd. So he goes out into the woods, goes down to where she usually jogs to see if he can find her. And he finds Sherry's phone, her headphones, with her hair wrapped in it on the ground. And he naturally freaks out. He calls the police. He is terrified. And it seems that maybe she has been yanked while she was jogging. Something that's similar had happened to a woman that lived in the area a few years before that was jogging, had been abducted. This is where everyone's minds immediately go, especially with the phone and the circumstances. So a full on search ensues for Sherry, and this becomes a massive media story. Helped, I think, by Sherry's appearance. She's very blonde, she's small, she's thin. There's all of these pictures of her just grinning ear to ear, big white smile. So I think she, is a young mother. She captured a lot of attention, and she's missing for 22 days.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that's the similarity too of every the beginning of a lot of like SVU series episodes is someone of a very similar look running through the park. They get grabbed while they're wearing headphones because your music's probably too loud. Like it's that idea that I think a lot of women can relate to of when you're alone in the middle of the woods, don't have your music too loud, be aware of your surroundings. Like it's things that I think a lot of people can relate to. So when the story broke, that's another reason I think it kind of spread because it was just another reason why women can't be safe in certain areas. I think it hit home with a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that is such a big fear for so many people, women especially, who don't feel comfortable jogging by themselves, going out by themselves, especially at night or whatever. But this is very close to her house. This is in the middle of the day. And apparently she wasn't safe. And that is very, very scary. And Keith obviously doesn't really know what to do in the situation. A lot of suspicion falls on him as well. He is a main suspect initially because husband is always a suspect. The spouse is always someone that gets questioned.
Right. It's always
And
number one.
who else has a motive to get rid of Sherry other than her husband? Although things do come to light about their financial situation as this case unfolds, and they had had a post-nuptial agreement. So he doesn't actually need to get rid of her, and there may not be a motive for him to do so, at least not a financial one, because if they separated, Sherry would not be entitled to any money or any equity in their house, the cars. It's all in Keith's name. It's all in his control, essentially, financially. And they had this postnuptial agreement because Sherri had an emotional affair when they were very newly married. So this comes up, and it in some ways takes heat off of Keith and in some ways puts it back on him. And the police don't really know what to think of him. And there's no evidence that he's holding her anywhere, or that she's come to any harm, or that he got rid of a body. And his story for the day seems to be checking out. And in interviews that he does on the news, he does seem very genuinely distraught, but we've seen that a million times also. The crocodile tears on TV, like, you don't know
Yeah.
what's really going on. And some
Yeah.
people were mentioning that, things weren't all perfect in Keith and Sherri's relationship, and they fought a lot and they had a lot of problems, and neighbors would hear them screaming at each other. And so it doesn't look great, but he also doesn't have a motive to get rid of her, especially not right then.
Yeah, and I think that you had the contrary of like the neighbors, it seemed very much testimony of mutual fights. Like it was both of them kind of going at it versus when Sherry's friends were talking about it, it was Keith was the problem.
Mhm.
But I think that's also when you're hearing that, you got to remember like if it's your friends, you're going to tell them your version, and 99% of people aren't good at taking accountability for their part in things. So her going to her friends being like, he's a terrible person makes sense versus the neighbors giving the story of, oh no, they were screaming all day makes I'd probably lean towards the neighbor. Like they both sounded like they were a little bit toxic versus just Keith being the problem.
Sure. Definitely. And it goes back to the overall issue of truth is relative from your perspective. Everyone's living in their own realities and their own thoughts and feelings, and it's not always going to be reflected. Even if you're trying to be honest with your family and friends, you're still not 100% honest because you're telling things from your perspective. And
Right.
it's hard to be neutral. And especially if you're angry, you're upset, you're venting, you could really make your husband seem like a terrible person. Whereas, to your point, the neighbors maybe are getting a slightly more balanced view because they're just observing as opposed to being given information from a source. But regardless, people fight. That's not
Oh,
necessarily
yeah.
crazy.
If
Doesn't
anything, if you
seem.
don't fight at all, that also is a problem. Like,
Yeah, and they have two little kids. I mean, there's always stuff you could fight about. There's stressors of everyday life, and
right.
no one knows what goes on behind closed doors. But
Yeah. But 22 days
regardless,
later, she does
yes,
appear and they do find her.
Thanksgiving Day, Sherry reappears on the side of a road about 150 miles away from where she lived. She is in terrible shape, covered head to toe in bruises. She has a metal chain around her waist. She's lost about 20 pounds in 22 days. And this is already somebody who is a very, very small, petite person. And one of the craziest things is that she has a massive brand on her back as well that has been burned into her skin. And she's got a crazy story to go with it. She says that she was abducted at gunpoint by two Hispanic women and kept captive for 22 days, beaten, tortured, and starved
Yeah.
until they just decided to let her go.
Right. That's where it gets bizarre to me because when I first started hearing about it, I would be like, okay, you're in California. There's a lot of gang activity in California. You're a pretty little housewife. And my brain went straight to drugs. And okay, you didn't pay because a lot of the cartel and extensions and things like that. Did you not pay your dealer and they decided to like come after you? Like that was where my brain first went personally.
Mm,
I don't know about
interesting.
you. At least at this
Mm,
point. at this
Sure.
point.
I guess that could be. I don't know if that's my initial thought, but I followed it back in the day, so I feel like from
Right. Because
2016 I've been thinking about Sherry.
yeah, I've tried to like think about it from like not hearing the whole story
Mhm.
because it sounds very bizarre that you just randomly were abducted by two women on the side of the road for no reason. Like, what's the reason? They're not swiping middle-aged women, females particularly, you're not swiping middle-aged women for no reason.
Yeah, and the brand is interesting. It says Exodus on it, which is from the Bible, but it doesn't really make sense in this case. It doesn't really seem
Right.
to have anything to do with anything else. It's like one of the most random things about the case.
Yeah, and the brand itself looks very uneven, I think. Kind of from the pictures, it doesn't look like it was done with confidence, I guess is the way that I would say it.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Maybe not an expert. I also just looked it up, and about 5% of stranger abductions are committed by women. It's a very small percentage.
Right.
N- Family abductions, abductions of children, custody disputes, stuff like that, that has much more women involved, but stranger abduction, it almost never happens. And I
Right. So that's why I'm like, at that point, there has to be something more involved than just a stranger.
Yes. And that raises a big question when they find male DNA on Sherry's clothes, because her clothes are collected. Her body is examined, photographed, and she is really beat up bad. But there's male DNA on her clothes, and it can't be explained. It doesn't match her husband, and there are no men involved in this crime. So, where is the DNA from? How is this possible? And it doesn't sit right with the police. You know, they spend a very long time trying to figure out what's going on. And in that time, Sherry and her husband are at home. They go back to their regular life. I mean, Sherry gets some funding from victims funds and is talking about writing a book, and she's in a lot of trauma therapy and having PTSD flashbacks, and they're trying to get their lives back together while the FBI is working in the background trying to figure out what actually happened. And they end up finding an old boyfriend of Sherry's, interviewing him, and a FBI agent ended up taking a trash can from his residence and testing it, and the DNA matched. So her ex-boyfriend James, DNA is on Sherry's clothes at the time that she's being found after being held 22 days by two random Hispanic women. And that's when it kind of all is falling apart for Sherry. And the
Yeah.
boyfriend admits it right away. And he says, she asked me to take her. She asked me to hold her. She asked me to beat her up. She asked me to brand her and told me what to write. He said that he took hockey sticks and hockey pucks and shot them at her face, slapped them at her face because he couldn't bring himself to like punch her in the face. But this is, I mean, very, very strange. His story is very odd. And even odder, Sherry completely denies his involvement in the beginning. Even when they're confronted, her and Keith together are confronted with the DNA evidence. Sherry's like, "No, no, that can't be. That doesn't make sense. How could he be involved?" Like not
Right.
admitting to anything. And DNA is one of those things that it's hard to it's hard to argue with. It's hard to refute DNA evidence like that.
Right. Like they're involved. Like if at this point, at least give me a version of how. Like there's no question.
Yeah, it's like you need to explain this better. Um so I mean at that point I don't know what you do if you're Keith. I guess you do exactly what he does, which is tell Sherri that we need to get divorced and I'm going to get full custody of the kids because you're going to go to prison for lying about this and wasting police time.
Right.
And
Well, I think also a big thing that pushed him there was the fact that the ex-boyfriend also even was saying that some of these injuries were self-inflicted by
mhm,
Sherri.
yeah.
And it's one thing to ask a like your I guess affair partner from his perspective to like help you with this rouge, but it's another thing to hit yourself so hard that you're bruising and like things of that nature. Cuz instinctually you don't like that's going to take serious focus and commitment. like and
Yeah.
I think from a spouse's perspective of like, you would be around my children. Like if you are capable of doing that to yourself, what are you capable of to our kids? So I see where he came from, how quickly he moved on that too.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like to hear Sherri tell it, she thinks Keith is like so unreasonable, but he really did the only thing that he could possibly do in reacting to this situation after after coping with her trauma for years. Like she doesn't she got arrested in 2022 and she was fake abducted in 2016. Like this played out over many, many years of him
Right.
dealing with her, and she's arrested eventually for making false statements, mail fraud, wasting police time. She owes a lot of money also. Um she got, like I said before, she got victims funds, but also because the whole thing was determined to be a hoax, the cost of the investigation is her problem now. And it was a full on search and rescue for 22 days. That's very expensive. I feel like honestly, the restitution of 309,000 doesn't even seem like enough to cover what was spent
Right.
probably in that time period.
Yeah, from all the different agencies and that yeah, cuz she did end up also pleading guilty, which I think is another level of that. It wasn't like
Mhm.
she went to trial and they found her guilty. She pled guilty
Yeah.
and then received 18 months in prison plus that $309,000 of restitution. I think you're totally right. I think it was probably way more than that, but my guess is at that point, is it worth going for every penny or is it just like a range number? I'm not sure, but I think the victim funds would be the priority, and then here's an estimate on like X amount of travel or the search fees and overtime and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So Sherry does go to prison and serves her sentence, and she has made a very small amount of repayment on what she owes. She has no custody of her kids, but she does get to have visitation with them and phone calls that are supervised by Keith. And I feel like that's pretty much like the best outcome that could have happened for everybody in the situation. But I do have some questions and I do have some I don't know if it's the right word to say concerns because Sherry has said in later years that she was so terrified of James and that's why she was not saying that he had abducted her, that
Mhm.
he did, that they were having an emotional affair, and that but that she did not plan the abduction, that she was texting him, that they were going to meet up, that they were planning to have an affair, but that she did not want to be kidnapped by him, and she did not want to be held for 22 days, and she didn't want to be branded, and she didn't want to be beaten, and all of that stuff she says just happened after he already abducted her, and that the only thing she did wrong was starting the emotional affair and then being too scared to tell the truth after being released. And even as I
Mhm.
say it, it's just not believable. It's really not believable. So
Well, to
it's a
double down on the reason it's kind of not believable is she then tells a version of Keith almost the same thing, but just with a different man. He was this horrible person. She was afraid for him to find
Mm.
out, which is why she made up the story. Like it you could always say that exact same verbiage and replace it with Keith minus a couple things. And it's the same version of she would talk about for him. So like how can two men be the same reason that you lied? Which one? They both can't be true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think blaming 2 Hispanic women is another reason this was so not believable and gained so much attention, but she also, when she did the drawings of the suspects, she described someone who she said looked exactly like James's mom to try to lead the detectives to the correct person, and that is so illogical and so crazy, and I feel like if she had just said a man had abducted her and not said that it was someone that she knew, it was her ex-boyfriend, when this all came to light later, she could have been like, "I was just scared to say who it was." But she kinda
Right.
screwed herself over saying that it was women and describing them in such detail, and then they just didn't exist.
Yeah. I think I think it's really the gender thing. I think that's true because like the state of California does a very high like Mexican population, Hispanic population. So saying there's some kind of Hispanic person who adopted you, fine. Again, he even has some Reyes, some Hispanic in him as well. So it would have connected. But making it multiple people, making it women, you're you're making it if it is out of fear, you're making it even more difficult for them to actually see what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that Sherry sometimes seems very believable, and she's done so many interviews. Because we could talk a little bit about the documentaries, and there have been many made about this case, and there's been a lot of comparisons between this and Gone Girl. That's, like, a big media thing, and Gone Girl happened prior to this, so it may have been an inspiration for what was going on here, and maybe this was just all a plot. And that's what I got from the documentary that Keith was heavily involved in, that this was all just a plan, and that she read Gone Girl and she was inspired, and she decided to do this very elaborate hoax. And then Sherry put out basically a counter documentary making a lot of excuses for herself and a lot of pleas for sympathy, I feel like. And Keith was so mean and terrible to me, and I didn't have a way to leave. And, you know, it, it doesn't, I don't know. I feel like she gets me when she talks, though. She seems so genuine when she's talking,
Yeah.
but nothing adds up. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if maybe there's somewhere in the middle, that there could be truth somewhere in the middle where, like, perhaps she thought she was just running away with James and things turned violent. But why would he brand her with Exodus unless she was trying to make it look like it's some sort of I that part
Mhm.
makes no sense to me still. I don't understand. Like, I guess it was just to, like, throw the police off in general, but why Exodus? It's not
Yeah.
even.
And it's not something that ever really gets touched on. Like I feel like even through the documentaries and interviews, no one ever asks. Like
Yeah,
it
like,
is
they
kind
don't
of
ask Sherry anyway.
random.
Yeah.
But I think her injuries for me, the more I looked into specifically the injuries, the brandings, the bruises, the marks, the more and more documentation I found of medical professionals, law enforcement, forensic examiners consistently going, these aren't consistent with her original story of things. If we go off her original version, the marks on her body don't add up to what she's telling us and the order of things that happened. You have medical professionals saying that there's a very strong belief that they are self inflicted or ordered to be inflicted because there are, I guess,
Hmm.
are patterns on how the bruisings and where they're located. And it just continuously made people more and more believe that it just wasn't accurate and it was inconsistent. So even if it was a partial truth, there's more to it that she would have been involved. And just thinking about how painful all of that would be, you have to be so committed to this storyline to endure all that. And I think it's true is like we see these male charismatic leaders a lot where they talk a really good game, and it's interesting when you have a woman doing it, kind of to your point, she gets you to believe, so you start to believe her the more you listen to her. But it's the same thing we see a lot of the male partners that we have talked about in the past. These charismatic, slightly narcissistic, confident individuals, they can make you believe anything that they say. And I think she has some of those similar characteristics where every time she talks, regardless of the version, because there's been different ones, you believe her when she's talking. And then after the fact, you're like, wait a minute, hold on. Like,
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I feel like that happened to me during this because I feel like I I never believe her until she's talking, and then I'm like, wow, what if there's some truth to this? You know, I can
yeah.
see how she's such a mind fuck to be around completely. And I
Hmm.
think that Sherry was I would like to hear your thoughts on what her motivation for this is. Like, why did she do this? If we're going with the theory that this is her plan completely,
Hmm.
that this was her idea, that James was just the most agreeable person in the world, still very bizarre that he participated in this, but let's say, because his reasoning is that her husband was so abusive and he needed to help her get away from him, which this did not
Hmm.
accomplish.
Right. I mean, if you think about like, I guess if we're going under the thought process, if it's 100% her, to your
Hmm.
point, you, a total stranger, are listening to her story and going, oh my God, wow, that, yeah, I could see that. Now imagine that you are someone who is having an emotional, a long term, on and off emotional affair with this woman.
Mm,
He
sure.
loves her and has loved her. She's the one who is left before. So he, like the lovesick little puppy, you're right. He's horrible. Let me do anything I can to help. Like, I could see how, if she can convince strangers that this is truth, how easy it would be to convince someone who cares about her. And from when they pulled phone records, she had been talking to multiple men, including Reyes. And I think Reyes was just the one that happened to be the most agreeable, the most compliant, the most manipulative. That this was the way that she got attention. She got out of whatever. I don't know if it was an attention, if it was like, I want people to feel sorry. I want the world to know who I am. I don't know. Um, but I do think it's just she had the ability to convince someone that they were maybe doing the right, they were helping. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I go back and forth.
Do you think that she was planning to come back the whole time?
That's the one that I just don't know. Because I think I think she was planning to come back, but I don't think she was planning on staying with Keith. I think this was her way of, he was going to leave her cuz he couldn't handle the trauma that she went through, and
Mm.
then she wasn't the bad guy. Like, I was kidnapped, I was abused, I have all this flashbacks, PTSD, and then you left.
So you think she was trying to get rid of Keith?
I think so.
Or do you think she was just trying to change the dynamic between her and Keith?
Oh,
Like
interesting
to make
view.
him more of a caregiver for her, like because she's so fragile and she's been so harmed and so abused. And how could you leave? Maybe he wanted to leave her. Maybe she thought that he was going to leave her and they had the post snup. So she would have been screwed financially. She wasn't
True.
working. She had gotten she something happened with her job. It seems a little vague to me when it's mentioned, but she had been working for, I think it was AT&T, and something happened and she's not working there anymore, and she had like a decent amount of severance, and so she wanted to do the stay-at-home mom thing for a little bit. Fine, fine, fine. But she still wanted to send the kids to daycare. And Keith didn't like that, didn't think it was necessary. If she's going to be home, then why do the kids need to go to daycare? And I personally
Mhm.
don't have an opinion on that. Like, if you can afford for them to go to daycare, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think anyway. Like, just because you don't work doesn't mean you have to be the stay at home mom if you can financially swing it. And some people can't handle being home all day with like little toddlers, and maybe there's other things that she was trying to accomplish in a day. It does seem a little weird though, that you're not working anymore and the kids are still going to daycare.
Yeah, because what's also like daycare is expensive. And I
Yeah.
think that is and I think you're right. Like if you can afford it, go for it. Like 1 or 2 days a week, give the mom a break. But I do also look at if you lost your income, one of your incomes, you now have to alter your life financially and your kids are still going to daycare, which is for 2 kids, you're looking at over $1,000 a month, easy.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
versus staying home with them. Like, I get it. You need a break. 100% agree. But I think that's a lot of the reason why some women stay home is because, from a financial perspective, it's your whole paycheck's going to go to the daycare anyway.
Yeah. I but I think that perhaps she wanted a different kind of lifestyle than she felt Keith was providing. Like, if she wanted to just not work. It's not that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. She wanted to just not work, and she didn't want to have responsibilities, which okay, but you do have little kids. And I feel like perhaps she thought that Keith's expectations of her were a little too high, and that she wasn't meeting his expectations. And whether that was just annoying to her or whether she was worried he was going to leave her, maybe she thought something this dramatic would kind of change his perspective on it. And it's like, well, of course she
Right.
can't go back to work. Of course she can't be watching the kids full time. She's traumatized. She survived an abduction. She was held hostage for 22 days and beaten senseless.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever thought of the perspective of didn't want to be stay at home mom, didn't want to work, just wanted to live her best life. I don't think I had thought of that perspective, but it's a good
Because I just,
viewpoint.
I just don't know what else, because she didn't leave Keith. You know what I mean? Like, she asked for him immediately when she came back also, and like fell into his arms and refused to speak to anybody without him present.
But again, plays that you're my hero kind
Mhm.
of mentality. And I think you're right. Like the post nup has a huge play where if I'd be curious, I wish we could read the post nup. Like I'd be
Mhm.
curious if the clause is like if she was found with an emotional affair and he divorced her, she gets nothing. But if he divorced her for irreconcilable differences, I wonder if she would get something. Like I wonder if it's just how because you know how like every prenup and postnup has their clauses of if this happens, then this happens.
Mhm.
I'd be curious if it needed to be him to do the divorce for her to get something.
That could
Or
be.
because she had the emotional affair, which caused the postnup, and she's clearly having one again, potentially more than one, depending on what version you read.
Mhm.
If she then has this horrific experience and then can't be the doting wife or the loving mother or whatever that he can't handle it, whatever the case is, and they end up getting divorced, if that nullifies like you know what? I'm curious if one of the clauses was something on who initiated.
Yeah, or if maybe it's just like if there's a divorce for reasons that are not infidelity, maybe that
Right.
maybe she would still be entitled to something. Um, I don't know, because I feel like she was always planning to come back because the way that her injuries were. It's not like she was just on vacation with her boyfriend for 3 weeks, and then on the last day, she asked him to beat her up so that she would look like she had really been suffering. Her bruises and her branding and stuff, like, it was in, like, multiple stages of healing. She had been very, very hurt many times over that time period that she was gone, and she didn't lose 20 pounds in 22 days by
Right.
living normally. You know what I mean? She was not eating, she was not seeing sunlight, she was locked in his house, and she was beaten or beating herself, like, every day, basically, that she was gone. And it's, like, hard for me to imagine the mindset that she had to have during that time period to keep that going. Also, why she came back when she did, I don't really understand either. It was Thanksgiving, and I kinda think she just wanted the attention and didn't wanna miss the holiday.
Maybe. Well, I think there's also one more twist that we haven't mentioned yet that again throws a wrench in whatever theory we have is that recently she backtracked again
Mhm.
and is back on this version of events where there was this big extravagant event thing. And this is where she starts kind of blaming more Keith than Reyes. And she was telling the truth the first time. And she's doing interviews, basically trying to fight for her children, and that Keith needs to love his children more than how much he hates her and just like give her back the kids
Mhm.
because the first story that she told was true. So now we have someone who's flip flopping again for what, the third, fourth time? Like, it kind of adds to the complexity of how stable are you if you're now getting a new version. Again, 2016 to present, we have another she's not letting it go.
Yeah. And I could see, if I was Sherry, I would continue to fight to try to get the kids back too, probably, but she just really doesn't have any legs to stand on, I don't think. I think Keith's gonna retain full custody, and
Yeah.
that's probably just how it is. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Because
I wonder what the
again,
kids think.
yeah. But like what judge in their right mind is if there's the slightest chance that she did do this all to herself and she was the orchestrator, why would you ever risk putting two children in a home alone with someone who's capable of that?
Yeah, it just wouldn't happen. And she has a record, she pled guilty, like, there's really no wiggle room. Like, she's convicted, she's a convicted liar, and but she acts so indignant when she talks about all of this. Like, Keith is so ridiculous for taking the kids away and that she's entitled to them. I think that's mostly what it is that
Right?
she's very
How dare
entitled.
him? How
Yeah,
dare he try to protect his children?
right, exactly. It's I would love to hear the kids' perspective. I do feel like all of these documentaries have done a pretty good job not focusing on the kids. There's no pictures of them, they don't say their names. I think that's good. We shouldn't be able to recognize them. They already have such a
Right.
standout name.
Right. And the reality is, as they get older, they're going to have to deal with their consequences, and anybody local to them knows
Mhm.
it's them. Like, I'm glad
Sure.
that and honestly, it's probably mostly Keith. Like, if from the way that Cherry presents herself, if she had her way, I bet the kids would be involved. Like, the kids would
I think
be
so too.
doing interviews. The kids would, and again, I think it's another reason why she's not going to get them back is he is doing his best to like hide his children from the media, let them be as normal as they can be considering the circumstances. And these kids themselves are going to have a lot of trauma because they had this version of mommy went through this really terrible thing. Okay, mommy lied. Now mommy's in prison, but mommy's back again and now saying something else happened and dad's like the poor things are like gonna have they're gonna need so much therapy from their own involvement or just proximity to the situation, and nothing, like no harm has gone directly to them that we know of, but just being around all of that is going to cause damage.
Yeah, although I feel like Keith tries to say now that Sherry was abusing the kids because there was like a couple little things where basically if they were sick, she would take like a bag, like a Ziploc bag of alcohol and like put it on their chest or like under saran wrap or something. She says that it was like an alternative to Vicks Vapo Rub, but I feel like in Keith's version it's like that she's trying to poison the kids. I wonder though if he has other concerns about her and like what she would do if she was unsupervised with the kids. And
Oh,
I agree. I
100%.
think if she's willing to do this hoax, like she'd be willing to do anything.
Right. And again, how would you can't risk something. Like these kids' lives are way more important than your opinion, right? And I also think at that point, like the kids typically are asked like do you want to see so your parent, like what are your, like they don't necessarily listen, but they do ask the children in custody cases a lot of the time, and it's normally done in private. So for all we know, these kids are sitting there like, please don't send me back to my mother, and that's a contributing factor.
That could be. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I just think that there's a lot of weird motivations going on with Sherry. I
Yeah,
think
I
she
think
mostly
there's
just wanted the
layers for
attention.
sure.
I think she read Gone
Yeah, and
Girl
I
and was like, "Ooh, great idea."
right, and I also think she had this image that she wanted to protect, because if you look at the men that she dated, like from a purely outside society beauty standpoint, she's beautiful. She's thin, she's blonde, she's charismatic, and her husband is tall, muscular. Like they had this perfect little image, and that tended to be her type. But Reyes, because when I was looking through a bunch of pictures of like current boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, didn't fit the pattern. He seemed kind of like the outlier. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's interesting that he was the one that she kept kind of pulling along.
Right. Well, I think that if you're dating Sherry, you're always kind of dating Sherry, and then she'll just keep you on the back burner to recycle when she needs you. That's the vibe I
Right.
get anyway. And I think she was always having emotional affairs. Again, it's an
Always
attention thing.
right. Like I have my option, but is there someone always looking, is there something better? Right? Because
Right.
there's pictures of her on like private jets and elaborate parties. And like it definitely seemed like she wanted to be like keeping up with the Joneses, even though like they lived comfortably, but they definitely didn't live like this elaborate, crazy Hollywood lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely not. I think that she wanted a different kind of lifestyle. She wanted a different kind of marriage. she wanted to be a victim, and that's why she did all of this.
Yeah. Do you so in a more recent my question for you would be in one of the more recent videos interviews that her ex-husband was a part of, they kind of dove into, do you have contact with Sherri? Would you ever have contact with her again? Because she has this pattern of getting rid of men, but them coming back. And he seems, the words coming out are, I would never have contact with her. But his facial expression seems very numb. Like he doesn't totally believe it. You know what I mean? Do you think that
Hmm.
there's potential for eventually her coming back to the family and children?
I don't I don't think publicly. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they like hooked up or something, you know? But I don't think that he would like actually fully get back together with her or like let her move in or anything.
Hmm. I hope not. But again, when you start talking to her, she's convincing.
Yeah. I mean, she's very manipulative, but I don't think he could do that publicly. It would just be the negative attention he would get for that. I don't think it would be worth it.
Yeah. But she would make it public. That's the thing. Like,
Oh,
even if he
totally.
tried to keep it quiet, he like made a mistake. She'd be like, "Nope, gotta tell everybody now because look it."
She would tell everyone, which is why I think that might be enough of a reason for him not to do it.
Yeah. Well, that was everything kind of I had. Is there any other thoughts or like opinions you have on Sherry?
I don't think so. I think we kind of covered it. It's a weird case, but I always I don't know, I always find her fascinating.
I agree. And I think the fact that she continues to bring it up again is where it gets interesting for me because this happened almost 10 years ago and we're
Mhm.
still getting, I don't want to say updates, but versions
But
of it,
kinda.
but kinda.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious what the next version is because if she's saying it's all
Yeah.
true
I wonder if
again,
it's
it's gonna open it again.
right. Like, I wonder if it's done now or if there'll be more.
I don't know. Maybe there's a
I don't
third
know.
guy involved. Next thing we
Oh my
know, it's
god.
gonna be because Ray is also, the minute that she brought up he was the one I'm afraid of, he hasn't commented since.
Mhm.
So I'd be curious if there is another player maybe that we just don't know about.
Could be. Could be. I don't think anybody else will get charged for anything, though. You know what I mean? Like everything's just
Yeah.
on Sherry at the end of the day because she's like the mastermind of it in the view of the police. Which I mean, if I was an investigator on this case, I don't think I would entertain even for a second that Sherry could be telling the truth after literally looking for her body in the woods for weeks. It's just yeah,
Yeah.
it just screams of like someone who is so obsessed with themselves that maybe she just
Mhm.
wanted to watch the search for herself.
Yeah, because there is speculation that she was like watching the news about herself while she was with Reyes
Oh,
before.
she was
Yeah.
100%. She was probably glued to the TV.
In between
And
self beatings.
someone who's so narcissistic, though, the way that Sherry is, like, that it would be, I think, exhilarating for her to watch the coverage of the search and people crying and freaking
Oh, I'm
out.
sure.
Hmm. Especially Keith. He was crying in interviews. He was genuinely distraught and heartbroken. And I'm sure she loved that. And I wonder if kind of like Gone Girl, if she was sort of considering going back to him because of how he was acting while she was missing. Like maybe the plan changed a little bit and she was planning to
Maybe.
kill herself, run away. I'm not really not sure. but watched him on TV and was like, "Aw, he does care about me."
Oh, that's
Keith.
it. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Maybe the plan evolved. The only reason I think that she was always planning to go back to Keith was because of how many injuries she had that were already healing.
Mm-hmm.
If she had not been harmed up until the last day that she was being held or something like that, it would seem like the plan, like it wasn't the plan the whole time to fake this as a kidnapping. It would be like more of, oh, well, I just went away with my boyfriend and I didn't realize everybody was going to freak out so much.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I kind of think she always did it and was always planning to go back dramatically.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll wait till the next version comes out when she tells us why she did it.
All right. Well, till next week.
Until next time.
All right. Bye.